I am very happy and actually honored to finally have met Dani Hart. We've been in touch through Growth Hacker Talk, the Slack community, for quite a while. I was always hoping that she would make the trip across the pond and enlighten us with her knowledge. She's a former head of GrowthHackers.com. She worked a lot with Sean Ellis and currently has her own growth consultancy called GrowthGal. I please want to request you a big round of applause for Dani Hart.
You can have my seat.
Okay.
Sit down.
Be humble.
All right. Well, thank you, Pascal. Like you said, we've been talking about this on Slack and multiple video calls for almost 2 years now. So I've been following the Dutch ecosystem for a while, being at Growth Hackers. There's people from all over the world reach out to Growth Hackers and want to know more, and I would schedule calls with just about anybody. And what I found with the Dutch was that they got the growth process. It was like they could repeat it back to me almost as well as I could to them. And so there's something here, something special in this culture that I hope that you all know is very special. And as Isabella pointed out, the US doesn't really like the whole direct negative feedback. However, I do, so this is a new presentation and I would love to hear from you afterwards. Don't be shy. Also on the East Coast, it's a little different than the West Coast, which is the other direction. East Coast, they are more direct. West Coast, they will say they want you to, go on go for coffee, and then they won't show up or they will never schedule it. So I like to associate with the East Coast style myself. But anyway, so today I thought I would change things up a little bit from my normal routine of talking about growth process and implementing a team and blah, 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 stuff that I could probably repeat in my sleep. But I want to focus today instead on what I'm now calling this enlightened growth leader. And I know there are some of you already in this room. So if you are, then great, give yourself a pat on the back, but wait until the end to do that so that you can see if you've done all these things. And so what does enlightened mean? Enlightened means a rational, modern, and well-informed outlook. That's all it means. It's nothing crazy. It's just what we're dealing with today. So we're gonna go through today's landscape. You probably have seen some of the things I'll show you, but that's okay. I just want to reiterate where we are today and why it's so challenging for all of us in growth. And then I'll talk about the minimum requirement for today's growth hackers. So if you're not doing any of this stuff that I'm talking about, work towards that. And then the last part will be 8 steps on your journey to becoming an enlightened growth leader, which you can start today. So the playing field. And I know you all know what a football field looks like because I saw it as I was walking past just about every house last night as the game was on. Unfortunately, there was not an exciting outcome. It was tied, but at least I think. Right, it was? Yeah. Okay. But anyway, it's important to know where you're playing because fans are going to be different no matter where you go. There's going to be grass, there's going to be holes. You need to know what's going on. So first, let's understand that marketing channels are evolving. And if you see this latter part, which is a little outdated, this goes back to 2015, you can see how many channels there are now to worry about. And if you look at MySpace, look, we had 5 years of MySpace. Luckily, rest in peace, top 8. But what we're seeing here is that there's so much more to play with as a growth marketer, as anybody, engineering, everybody needs to be informed of all these channels where your customers live. And you need to know that what's sacred now isn't sacred tomorrow. So if Facebook is your top performing channel, that's awesome, but monitor that, continue to learn from that. And then we also have the fact that marketing channels quickly lose efficiency. So I know we all talked about this growth hack earlier of LinkedIn automation. Well, how many people have gotten a message in LinkedIn that was why is this person messaging me? And just couldn't understand. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody would raise their hand if I get loud enough time. But what happens is people, you have the early adopters down here, the people that are constantly running tests and trying to figure out what's working and just really hungry to figure out how to grow their product. And then Everybody starts to adopt that same tactic, and then we hit right here, which means that it is no longer effective or as effective as it once was to compete in that channel. So this green spot is the hot spot. That means like your customers are there, the competition isn't there, so you get an effective way to reach your customers. And then we've got our marketing tech landscape, which this gives me a headache every time I look at it, but we've got 150 companies back in 2011. Fast forward to 2019, they can't fit all of the companies on a landscape anymore, so they decided to just call it 7,000 and say, well, like, you know, that we know there's more, but we've hit a point where we can't even like consume all of this. And we have platforms where you can build one-off companies off of an entire platform. So it's very difficult to keep attention, right? The average human attention span is now 8.25 seconds. So I've lost all of you at least once already in this presentation. And that's okay, right? We're all dealing with it, but in 2000, this was 12 seconds. 2015, 8.25, which is actually less than a goldfish. Goldfish is around 9 seconds, scientists believe. So what this means is that growth is really freaking hard, guys. It's hard. And we're in this room because we are relentless people. We are like, we're crazy, right? We think that we can make things work, and we need that. We need believers that are going to drive progress. So all of you here, round of applause, please. For yourself, yeah. So growth is hard. So like I said, there are some of these minimum requirements that we all need to be doing now. One is living and breathing by this circle, right? We're coming up with new ideas, we're prioritizing them with like impact, confidence, ease, and then we're testing them, and then we're analyzing them, and then we're putting more ideas, even better ideas back into the circle, and we have this system of how we learn. Each of us has this, and whether or not we apply it to our company, our life, our career, our relationships, this circle remains prominent, right? This is like how we learn as human beings. That's one line. But so a good growth leader will zoom out and say, okay, across this entire customer journey, where is the most broken thing? Or where is the biggest opportunity? And then we zoom into one area. So let's say new trialers. We want new trialers to be active within the first week. That is our goal. We want to increase that to 20%. Okay, we have that objective, and then we constantly test new ideas, and then say 4 to 6 weeks later, we zoom out and we repeat this process to say, is this still the best area to be focusing on? If not, then we move. If so, then we stay and we ask customers questions and we get better ideas and we keep running until we reach those growth rates that we want. So the full customer journey, zooming out, again, these are just some definitions. So acquisition, you've got the organic, paid, social, business development, content, the awareness, what brings people to your website. And then activation. This is probably the most important growth metric in my opinion, because if people don't get onboarded correctly, right? As Mark was talking earlier about the emotion involved in that onboarding process, if someone has that shitty experience the first time, they're not going to come back and they're not going to be retained because they're not seeing the value that you have. And then referral and revenue is a joke at that point because you can't even get them to use your app or whatever your product is. And then retention, so are customers continuing to get core value from your product? Are they staying engaged? Are they making repeat purchases if it's an e-commerce? And then referral, are they sending customer referrals to their friends, or are they sending reviews to different sites so that you can boost your own SEO? And then revenue, so what are the monetization practices in place? You can run a lot of different tests in this, and this could be a lot of work right here. Like this monetization strategy, we all have this idea, oh, it's going to be a freemium. Well, freemium might not make sense for your product, but until you test it, it's kind of hard to say for sure. So lots of opportunity here for testing. And then again, zooming in. So here I added an objective, meaning that you zoom out, you find the best thing, and then you zoom in. And again, this doesn't have to be just about your company. This can also be about your individual self. You can say, objective, I want to lose weight. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to eat less. I'm going to go for runs. There's a lot of different ideas that you can test. Some of them will work, some of those won't. but then you'll be able to learn over time. So generally, big successes in growth hacking come from a series of small wins compounded over time. Each bit of learning acquired leads to better performance and better ideas to test, which lead to more wins, ultimately turning small improvements into landslide competitive advantages. So you are building company intuition. You are building product intuition. You are building your own intuition on how to grow a company when you are running these tests and you constantly look at these opportunities for growth. And that's from Hacking Growth by Sean Ellis. So great, we're a growth hacker. We don't quite have our sword yet, but we're gonna get there. So number one, we're gonna start with understanding repeatable customer value. So Isabella talked a lot about product market fit and how important it is before international, but it's also important before you start scaling your company even locally. So what does that look like? It's a bunch of people that say, yeah, I'd be very disappointed if your product went away. And you can use lagging indicators like retention to see, does the retention go down to 0, or does it kind of tail off, or does it like actually stay relevant? And if it tails up to 0, then that means you don't really have that product market fit. But unfortunately, that takes a lot of time to determine, right? If you have to wait for customers for months, like their data for months on end, it's going to be very difficult to see if that is or is not product market fit. So Sean Ellis developed the product market fit survey, which I think is great for validating product market fit. But even if you do have product market fit, there is gold in this survey. So I will walk you through that. It means talking to your customers, which is scary, right? It's scary because what if they tell you they don't like your product? What if you don't have 40%? It's like, shoot. But this is what's going to help you get to that 40%. This is what's going to help you figure out who those customers are, how they found your product, what the benefit is. So there's 7 questions. You can send a survey. The survey can go to all of your customers, or if you don't have that many customers, then get on the phone and have a conversation with these people and record that stuff, because it will be really helpful for driving some internal stakeholder battles down the line. So the first question is, how do you feel if you can no longer use this product? Very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed, or NA, I no longer use the product. You want the very disappointed, and then you want to focus on the answers to the rest of the questions for the people that have said very disappointed. So the rest of the people, you can basically just say, scrap that, we're going to focus on this, because we're focusing on our must-have customers. And then we will ask, how did you discover the product? Because those are the people that like your product, so you want to find more of those people, and double down on those channels that are already working. Then, what would you likely use as an alternative? So this gives you an understanding of how easily replaceable your product is, whether or not there's competition out there that could make your product irrelevant like tomorrow. And then 4, what is the primary benefit you've received from the product? So as a marketer and someone that writes content for websites, for value props, for benefits, this is like doing my job. Like pretty much when I get the customer's feedback on that, I have the intel written by the customers. How can you argue that, right? It's like, this is what's working. Let's go find more of those people, whether that's just in ads to bring people to a landing page, or that's actually changing your website and all of the value props on your website. 5, have you recommended the product to anyone? If so, please explain. Again, giving you awesome content, but also helping you understand if you have a virality factor already, and if maybe you should invest some money into a referral program or something like that. And then what type of person do you think would benefit most from the product? So this just helps get into the customer's head to see who would benefit from this product, and that might be very different from what you initially thought. And then lastly, how can we improve the product to better meet your needs? So again, focusing on the must-have customers. Nice to have is like, it's good, you're like getting there, but you're not quite ready for sustainable growth at that point. Like you might get some growth, but it's not gonna last. Those customers won't stay retained. So number 2 is improving cross-functional relationships. So who here has like implemented this growth process at their company, or has seen like there's something at the company that, resembles that? Right? Okay, so that's like maybe 50%. How many of you, of those people, have ran into issues of getting resources? Yeah, that's pretty much most. Okay. It's really freaking hard sometimes, guys, and it takes time. But you can take the time now to mentally start preparing for this, to say, hey, I know I'm going to hit this battle, So let's figure out some ways to do it. Elon Musk once said, every person in your company is a vector. Your progress is determined by the sum of all vectors. So if you have Sally going here, and you have Joe going here, and you've got Jessica going straight ahead, and then you've got a different company that's got Jessica, Joe, Sally, which one's going to get to B faster, A to B? It's going to be the second team, because everybody is moving this forward. Everybody's got the same momentum going in the same direction. So, has anybody ever heard of the Indian proverb of 6 blind men and the elephant? It's a good one. My boyfriend and I were watching Narcos, and it came up, and I was like, wait, I get it. The elephant's the customer, and then we've got marketing, and we've got sales, customer success, product, yeah, they all see the customer different. And it's your job as somebody who gets this, who sees this, to be able to help visualize the customer for your team. And if that means setting up a meeting so that sales and customer success can sit in the same room and they can see, okay, we've got this ear and we've got the horn, we can like start to put this together. But it takes time, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it takes interpersonal skills. It helps to understand where the person's coming from, what their incentives are, because every person touching this elephant has a different incentive. They do. It's just part of the job description. That's how companies have evolved, to have different departments, and it's for the right reasons. But at the same time, growth is what brings those together to really focus on the customer first. So then you, as the growth leader with your cool sword, you can clear the way for your elephant to reach water. So I'll go into a little bit of a story. This is a company's setup that I used to work for called Payoff. It was a financial tech company to help Americans pay off credit card debt. We've got a lot of it, a much needed product. So we were all in these different silos, and it was kind of a nightmare. So I was running direct mail and realized that no matter how much I tested the creative, and I'm talking like millions of pieces of mail, not just like, okay, we're gonna try like a neighborhood thing, like a lot of mail. And we were testing creative, we were doing user research, we were testing targeting, we were doing all these things, and we would get incremental optimization. We would, we got 0.6 instead of 0.5, and it was like, ugh, this still isn't working. We're spending too much money on this. So then we ended up putting a team around increase the number of approved loans to funded, meaning that everybody already went through the funnel to submit all their documents, they did everything they were supposed to, and they got approved, but they never went and actually took the loan. And so we got a group of myself, so I was the marketing person, then we had product, we had customer success agents. We actually had two. We had one on the quantitative side, one on the qualitative side. Compliance, because they helped us write copy that would actually get approved by our banks instead of having to go through the whole compliance loop. And then we had user research and data analysts to help us actually visualize what was going on. And we launched, I think, 3 tests within a month and 2x'd that rate, meaning that all of my direct mail acquisition cost cut in half. I could have never done that on my own. I just couldn't have. And I wasn't doing that on my own. It was I already had a team that was working on this direct mail. It wasn't just me. So that just goes to prove when you put the customer front and center and you say, hey, we're going to focus on this problem, because they're clearly not seeing the full value if they're doing all of that and then they're not getting the loan that they came there for, that they really need. They need to pay off their credit card debt. There's a lot of stress and fear associated with money, and we were helping them by doing this. So leading cross-functional teams can be tricky, but it starts with understanding what success looks like together. And if this is super challenging for you to get, and you're probably not, because you're all Dutch and you guys like working in groups, and it's good. Isabella's thing showed it. It was yeah, over here, you guys are good at that. But it does help to bring the customer front and center, whether that's a video or some chat, whatever you can tangibly get from that customer to say, what are you feeling right now? And then putting that in front of a team is really hard to deny the customer. And yes, there are going to be customers that are super irrational, so you don't want to constantly say, we've got a problem, we've got a problem, we've got a problem. You got to introduce the good stuff too. What do customers actually like? Let's do more of that. And then 2, consult early and often. So every person in a cross-functional team is a risk. Every single person, because if they drop the ball, then your project will fail. This is kind of just stakeholder management. This is project management. But when you're in growth, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, we need to focus on these channels, we need to do all this, then we also need to focus on all these interpersonal connections. But this is what actually helps you drive that really impactful growth. So consulting early and often, meaning checking in with the people that are running different parts of the team to say, hey, are you on time? Like, do you have any blocks? Like, can I help you out? And if they do, like, talk with them, try to figure that out. Develop relationships throughout the company. So not just the people that are directly on your team, but I know at Payoff, we had craft beer Thursday. Every Thursday, craft beer, awesome. A lot of engineers showed up. And I was like, I'm going. And I would stay until close, basically. One, I really liked the people I worked with, but 2, I learned so much from them, right? I learned more about engineering than I ever would have known if I didn't do that. And I know it's difficult to just say like, hey, implement a craft beer Thursday and you guys are good. Like, not every team is gonna have that. And so you have to get creative. You have to try new ideas. Yeah, it's like the growth process again, right? Try new ideas and test them. Say, I want to take Joe out for coffee, or I want to, see what Jessica's up to today, and see if she might want to go for a walk with me. And then ask for and welcome feedback, which you guys, I can skip this. You know that. Remember, you're working with humans, and humans can be super irrational. So just be patient. And I know the patience thing is probably the most difficult, because in growth, we have all of these inputs coming in. We have like email notifications, and we've got Slack messages, and we have real-time measurements on all of our campaigns. But it's difficult to realize that sometimes humans need a little bit more work. They need like a conversation, and we need to talk things out, or we need to understand where someone's coming from and what their blocker actually is. Cool. So then number 3, this is the fun one, know yourself. Who here knows themselves? Really? Really? Yeah, I get in there. Cool. All right, so knowing yourself, this is the one that I think has changed the way that I do work, and that's because when I made the realization that in any situation, in any project, the one thing that I know 100% every time that I can control is myself. And so I can control the way that I respond to something, I can control the way that I read and react to something. So it starts with you, right? And it's really helpful to know what biases are immediately present within yourself. So there's a personality assessment, which I know someone's already mentioned. Actually, Pascal showed a tool of real-time personality taking, but that's actually really fascinating. So HEXCO stands for, it's 6 dimensions: humility, emotionality, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness. And if you've heard of the OCEAN framework, this is like the new and improved version. And each of these dimensions has 4 subdimensions. And so you're basically testing yourself on like 30 different dimensions. And what happens is you'll be dominant in like 1 or 2 personality traits, and meaning that you're stronger in one of those than the rest of the population. And so for me, I'm really high on openness, meaning that like no idea is too crazy, like let's try it, let's go. But when I realize that about myself, I can then say, well, this person over here, this low agreeableness, they're kind of stubborn and inflexible, and they probably won't see how great this idea is right away, because I need to like do my job to present data and like a more rational reason as to why I think we should try this idea, right? I might be a little too outlandish for some people. So just knowing this stuff about yourself is super helpful, and there's an entire book written on like all the different personalities, and even if you use like 3 different personality exams, like whatever, fine, just learn what you can about yourself and what biases are inherent. So these are just like different buckets of the personality assessment that we use at SciML, one of my clients. So the next one is refine your self-care and schedule time for it. And you're like, what? We're at a growth thing and she's talking about self-care? Well, yeah, because you know what? Stress plus rest equals growth. So a book Peak Performance, they do a lot of research on the top performers, like, all throughout business, top performers in athletics, and what they found was that they all had the emphasis on the rest. And so when I say refine your self-care strategy, I mean put that growth process in place to say, how can I relax? And so for me, this has been an ongoing feat. Like, I just continuously try to figure out, like, where is my best mental space? And for me, I've found so far, it's doing a yoga class and then going to the sauna and then afterwards walking. And then afterwards, I'm like the clearest person I've ever been in my life. And I didn't even know it was possible. It's like it was like almost like a high the first time that it happened. And I was like, okay, there's something really awesome there. And then I go and I write, and it's like the most creative writing that I have. And that's because I've taken time to figure that out. Now, if you don't have time for it, make time. Because if you don't have this rest part, you will burn out. Okay, I've encountered too many people that have experienced hospital rides because they've gotten really good at this part, right? They take all the work on themselves and they live an otherwise pretty unhealthy life, and then they end up burnt out and unfortunately sometimes in the hospital. Be aware of your biases, as I mentioned earlier, but a couple of common biases: curse of knowledge. So I have a background in marketing automation. I'm like, guys, we can do all these cool things, and you just you trigger this and you do that and this, and everybody's like, what is she talking about? But I assume that, like, I'm like, they got it, right? No, they don't. They don't understand you, and so you have to do your work as a communicator to help people understand where you're coming from, which means breaking things down to the least common denominator and then building up from there. Another common bias, the sunk cost fallacy. So I love this little image here, but basically, like, just because you have a project that you've invested a lot of time and money and effort into doesn't mean it's still the best way forward. And so if you can have this understanding of this bias, it's going to help you to say, hey, you know what, I know we invested a lot of time, but it really doesn't make sense anymore, right? Google's really good at this. Like, you can go to Google's RIP website and see all of the websites that they've sunsetted, and you can actually you can write your remorse on it. It's like weird. It's like a graveyard. But they're good at it. They know when to leave something because there's better opportunities elsewhere. Confirmation bias. This is a good one. There's always going to be objective facts, and somewhere in the middle of what confirms our beliefs and these objective facts is what you see. So it's really helpful to try to say, like, hey, how do I prove myself wrong in this situation, right? And this happens, and I'm sure that after this presentation, when we dive into the data, that confirmation bias may be something that comes up. I don't know, we'll see. But confirmation bias can be really relevant in data as well, because if people say, I want to make this thing work, and they're like, well, let's show all the metrics that show that it works, but in reality, we're not measuring the right thing. And then groupthink. So I know that this one is, I don't know that this is prominent here, but I know that you guys are really good at working in groups, so I can only imagine. When you are working in a group and you decide that the idea that you come up with is the best because no one wants to break conformity. They don't want to say, actually, I have this other data that says maybe we should move in a different direction. So being aware of this, and if that means finding ways to have feedback channeled underneath so that you can get this information if somebody on your team does have another idea that would be different than the group's, that's helpful to know. And then 6, engage rational thinking. So whenever we have these emotions that show up, we either have positive or we have negative emotions, it's like a short period of time that we ride these emotions. And it's really helpful to be able to just observe them and to see, like, okay, take a pause. I'm really angry right now. Should I respond? Probably not. Okay. Or I'm really excited. Should I go press send again because it worked the first time? Well, let's take a pause, right? And I know, hopefully I'm not getting too hippy-dippy here, but this has been, really helpful for me, so hopefully it's helpful for you too. And some ways to do this are practicing mindfulness, practicing meditation, taking slow and controlled breaths, and taking a break in nature. So these are all known to help engage the rational side of your brain. And that doesn't mean that you will never have emotions. Like, you will always have emotions, but it's being able to kind of like lift up above those mentally and say, I'm bigger than these things. Like, before I came up and presented, my heart was racing. I was like, wow, my heart's racing. I can feel my emotions, because you can usually feel in your stomach, your chest, and your throat. And so I was feeling it in my chest, so like the heart racing. And I was excited. I'm excited to be here, like excited to share this with you guys. But being able to just basically say, hey, you know, yeah, I'm freaking out a little bit, but it's okay. Like, I'm just gonna put this freaking out on the bench, and I'm gonna go up there anyway, right? So the freaking out's still here, like, but I just was able to observe it and then manage it. And then, so I want to take a second for this slow and controlled breaths. So I'd love to practice with you guys. Let's all sit up, right? Nice and straight. You can stand in the back, just make sure you don't fall over. All right, now pipe down. All right, so now shut your eyes. Oh, shut your mouth first. All right, now shut your eyes. Let go of all of the air in your chest. Now breathe in for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now open your eyes. So that one practice is something that can really help when you're feeling stressed. How's everybody feel? Did you feel any different? Probably should have had you check in at the beginning or whatever. And I know this is a little bit awkward of a setting to be doing this, right? It's like, is anybody watching me? Am I doing this? But that's called the box breath, and there are many other breaths that you can try to actually, you change your actual mind. Like, you calm your heart rate, you can do a lot of different things with your breath, but until you start practicing it, it's really easy to get into shallow breath, which is we're typing all day, we're not using our full lung capacity, but when we are, and we take a deep breath, we get oxygen to our entire body, not just like what's necessary to stay alive. And so that helps everything, including what's up here, your noggin. Number 7 is find mentors and support groups. So everybody here can now connect with one another and be, each other's support group, right? Ask somebody, hey, can we stay in touch when I've got some challenges? Can I reach out? Like, have somebody that you can talk to, because growth gets hard, right? I already emphasized that enough. This is how to stay sane and avoid that burnout. Growth Mentor is another great option. We've got the founders in the room. Yeah. They're right here, yeah. But another great platform for meeting people that are experts across the world in different areas. So if you're having problems in marketing automation or SEO, like, they have an expert for you to talk to. And then last, and my favorite, is practice curiosity. So this one question changed my entire way of working. So what can I learn from this? It's so simple, but when you practice it, it can really make a difference. Because guess what? At the end of the day, your company right now probably won't live as long as you do, right? Like, just the statistics of like how long companies last, it's not that long. And so take every opportunity that you can, every failure, every interaction, every relationship to learn. And when you just filter your mindset of, what can I learn from this, right? Like, you're getting frustrated because Pascal did something, you're like, why did he launch that? I wasn't ready, and now the customers are flowing in and I have no one to fulfill the customer support. Well, what can I learn from this? Well, I need to figure out how to rein Pascal in. How can I do that? There's a lot of different ideas, but the idea is that you just flip the script in your head to say, what can I learn from this? And then a few books that I recommend for all those book nerds out there. Hacking Growth is great for like the basics, and then Never Split the Difference is an awesome book for developing empathy. So a great book for that interpersonal stuff that you're going to hit. And then understanding personality, as I mentioned, this explains all the Hexaco stuff. Peak performance, that's the stress plus rest equals growth equation, a lot of detail there. And then stress proof, this talks about the science of some of the things I recommended in the observing your emotions. So congrats guys, you made it.